So here we are. Basting is done. The kilt is on the table. The iron is hot because I just heard the rheostat click to tell me, yeah, it's hot. Up to pressure. I have my spritz bottle of cold, clean water. Vancouver tap water. Just about the best in the world, I think. If you live in a place where the water is, I don't know, quite mineral, quite whatever, you may want to test a sample piece of cloth using your own water to see if there's going to be any adverse effects, like if there's like high mineral content or something like that. So some people use a brush or a rag to put the water on. I use a spritzer, and I'm doing it this way so the water is getting into the pleats a little bit. Now I do have a couple of videos on ironing a kilt, but because we're doing this in real time, what the heck, let's just carry on. Now I've unpicked the fringe so that I'm going to press it and the steam will cause the fibers to swell and it'll look a little more rich. So wetting down the turn back there. Don't have a turn back on this side. I do have some chalk marks though. Okay, good to go. Piece of cotton twill, the same stuff I use in as my canvas. Now, let's start by removing those chalk marks on the inner apron. This is a General Electric antique iron. I've talked about them elsewhere. They're far better than modern clothes irons. These things, this is rubbish. I mean, I can press a shirt with it, but it's totally inadequate for pressing wool. I mean, on top of everything else, it's got a chip in it. So if it sits motionless for a while, it decides, oh, I'm not using the iron, and it switches it off. And I'm like, no, dummy, I was waiting for you to get hot enough. Yeah, this, I dislike them. Okay, there's another chalk mark. The chalk mark there. Good, good. I used to use household irons and it just took forever because you'd iron, I don't know, 2-3 pleats, and you'd have to stop and let it warm up. 3 more pleats, let it warm up. Took forever. This thing's probably 80 years old. I had to make a new cord for it, as you can see. Which, of course, that's not CSA certified because I made it myself, but my own rule that I abide by is I never leave this thing when it's plugged in. I never more than, don't walk away from it. And as long as I can hear and see the steam, I know that the wool is okay. It's not being harmed. Weighs about, it's got to be close to 5 pounds. Of course, having said that, I'll put it on a scale later and see if I'm blowing smoke there. Can't do this in a hurry. Now, some people will use a clapper, and I'll use a clapper on some things, which is a piece of wood, in this case a piece of western red cedar, and hold it down on the work, and the wood draws the heat and the water, the moisture, out of the wool. Now if I was, see, if I was ironing 1 or 2 layers, that would be okay. But I really don't bother with a clapper when I'm ironing a kilt, because this is 2, 4, 6, and in some cases 8 layers of wool. And the clapper is simply not going to be able to draw enough moisture out of it for it to make a difference. So I'm going to iron this, and then I'm just going to unplug the iron and walk away and leave it overnight. And then tomorrow morning, in 12 hours, I'll be able to start working on the kilt again. This pressing table of mine is made of yellow cedar, what Americans call Alaskan cedar. I think it was wainscoting. It's the same thing you see in the back of my back wall there. But I mounted it upside down to get a smooth surface, because the wool itself, the wood itself, acts a bit like a clapper. I mean, if I was doing this, if I didn't have this surface, I would, let's say if I was using a table, like my work table, I would first lay down a piece of cardboard or a piece of door skin the same size, and then a woolen blanket over it. And of course, anyone who served in the army, at least from back in my day, has got at least one wool army blanket tucked away somewhere that he somehow managed to fail to turn in when he left the service. But with this wood, I don't need that. It's a firmer surface, so I can get a better crease. Now, as good as this iron is, I'm still going to have to stop a couple of times in the process to let it warm up again. Yeah, I think he's going to like this. Sitting and waiting for a bit. Cool. Give it a bit more water. And this, incidentally, this is a tailor's ham. It's cotton lining and rammed very hard, very solid with it feels like packed cloth. And a tailor will use this for pressing, let's say, the shoulder of a suit coat. But when making an army kilt properly, and again, this is something that I wasn't trained, but I did see just a fragment, just a passing scene in a British Pathé film, and I'll try to find it and then post it in the comments or in the link, of them pressing the kilt, doing 2 presses. So you're pressing down here, you're pressing the apron, and then you're putting this under the bottom third of the felt and pressing around that. And I think that's how they achieved that wonderful effect of absolutely parallel from the widest point of the seat to the bottom of the kilt. So with the next 2 kilts that I'm making, we're going to see that, because I'm going to experiment with that. Just gonna add a little more cool water to this. There we are. Okay. Oof. All right. As you can see, we've got a bit of topography here. So I'm going to iron the entire front apron because it needs a little bit of shrinking. There'll be a bit more shrinking to do on the inside, I'm sure of it. And the kilt, after it's finished and after the customer has received it and is wearing it, the kilt's going to continue to shape itself to the individual. Again, a bit of stretching, a bit of shrinking. And if the customer takes care of the kilt in the manner that I'm going to show them, this really should be the only time it needs to be pressed in its life. I think you've seen my kilt in the ancient Stuart that I made for myself about 30 odd years ago. You know, I've run, well, the equivalent of a marathon. That'll be a video in itself. 26 miles in a day, running from pub to pub, so you can figure out how that one turned out. I've waded streams in it. I've slept rough in it. And good, that's really nice because that's fluffed up a little bit. And we can see just the merest little dimples there from my stitching on the back there. Okay, now looks nice from the outside. I have to be a bit careful because wet, warm wool or wet, hot wool is plastic in the original meaning of the word. It can be stretched and it can be shrunk. So I have to be a bit careful as I'm manipulating it. Now look at the inside, and you look at it, it looks like it hasn't been touched, right? So we need to do some, you can see here, we need to do some shrinking here. Don't really need any shrinking there, but there's quite a bit of shrinking also needed here. I hope this is in the frame right there, but we're going to see how I do that. I had the advantage because when I was in high school, all those many decades ago, okay, that's an annoyance. I was basting and I managed to catch the corner of there. lay flat, you bugger. Yeah, in high school I had the advantage that they still taught shop because automobile technology was still primitive enough, and cars were made from metal rather than plastic. And I do sound, yes, a bit like a testy old man who prefers the way things were. But it meant that we picked up a bunch of really interesting skills, and there's really no such thing as wasted knowledge, because what I'm getting at is in shop they taught us how to shrink metal. So when you had a car with a busted fender, a busted wing, crumpled metal, you used heat and hammering to smooth the metal out again. Nowadays they just throw the thing in the bin and order a new one. If it's plastic, the whole thing's been destroyed. But so they showed us how to reduce metal. So we don't have much shrinking here, but we need shrinking here. So I'm going to start at the edge and work my way to the crease. And I'm going to start at the corner and work my way to the top. And by so doing, I'll be shrinking the cloth in the right sequence. That's the theory, at least. Okay. See how that looks. Very nice. Now we just have to shrink that. There we go. Cool. Over that. Now I'm just going to work my way from the deep pleat right here to the outside edge of the inner apron, which again will have the same sort of shrinking done to it. Now I don't pre-shrink this canvas. I've never found it to be necessary. I suppose I'm giving it a bit of a treatment here with this steaming. And I'm definitely going to press these seams to be as flat as can be. Sounds like I have to tighten the screws on that handle. It's clanking around a bit. Heat up just for a minute. I got this iron. Oh! And I think over the winter I'm going to wire this up. What does it say? General Electric hot point 115 volts. I think Okay, patent, well, patent numbers, but not a patent date. But it looks like a date of manufacture stamp, which looks like 1924. But this thing's gotta be, well, if I want to work on my arms, I can come down and just play with this thing, can I? Can you imagine how bra with a W, washerwomen were of a century more ago, slinging these things around every day? You could pick up side jobs as blacksmiths with that amount of upper arm development, upper body development. And again, miles apart from that rubbish modern iron I was just showing you. I mean, it's designed to be light. What's the point? This has, again, this is about 3 or 4 pounds, I think. And there's enough mass there that it holds the heat. I mean, eventually, if I work with it long enough, I have to stop and let it reheat. But nothing like the frequency of that modern piece of, insert strong word here, that modern rubbish. Okay, it's cooling down a bit, so I'm going to, there's all these clues, the thread's still hanging off. I'll be trimming those off later. But yeah, I'll get this done. Should take me about, I don't know, it'll take as long as it takes. You can have it faster, you can have it done right. Almost there. Oof. Yeah, that'll be. Again, as long as you can hear the hiss and see the steam, wool's in no harm, no danger. See, this iron is a next generation beyond the first elderly General Electric iron I started using, oh, many years ago. Got to be close to 30 years ago. And it was my granny's old iron, and I think it dated from about 1910. And it didn't have a rheostat. You can hear this one. If it sits long enough, you hear a click, which means I believe that it gets to a certain temperature and then it breaks the circuit so it doesn't keep getting hotter. At least that's the theory. I don't trust the rheostat. So again, I never leave the room and this thing's plugged in. But her old iron would just keep getting hotter and hotter and hotter. So you just had a, I can't remember her spitting on it, but I know people have just gone to see how the spit dances on the surface. And I can see from that, the one this is cool, I'm going to have to give that a clean because that discoloration shouldn't be there. Okay, we're getting there. Couple of 3 more moments. Yeah, a couple of 3, whatever. I'm getting kind of tired. It's just past quitting time, so so close. And I guess if you didn't have a cord, because every few years I have to make a new cord for this thing. But I suppose you can heat it on a stove element or in a gas ring, I suppose. Okay, once again, we are shrinking. And once again, I'm going to start from the outside and the corner and work my way to the top. It's what, the 18th of October, and I've very nearly finished my Christmas shopping. Mark you, I don't have many people to buy for. 4 people at last count. Okay. There we go, that's nice. It's going to be very interesting to see how the appearance of this cloth changes, how the palette seems to change when seen under different light conditions. We're seeing it now under LED. I think they're LED. It looks like a fluorescent, but it's not actually fluorescent. But it's supposed to be the equivalent of daylight, but not quite. It'll be interesting to see. I think in bright sunlight, in the shade of bright sunlight, I think it'll look more gray, and it'll look more purplish in bright sunlight. Okay, that is that. I unplug the iron. I hang up my pressing cloth. I dump out my pan of warm water. And last but not least, oh, hold on. Turn out the light. And last but not least, I bid you all adieu. And we'll check in tomorrow when we proceed with this. We'll get the top band on and get the straps and buckles on. And it'll be ready. Maybe even get the lining in, but we'll see. I'm not sure what time the customer's showing up. So have a good night. Talk to you tomorrow.